Cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Bryan, Randy, and Andre, the Security Squawk crew. Welcome to another episode. How are you guys?
Doing well. Just finished buckling up.
Yeah, that's right.
I know. I had to get a chair. It's so exciting in here. So welcome to another week, another show. We do the business of cybersecurity here on the Security Squawk podcast, as many of you know. If you're new to the show, new to the podcast, we appreciate you. And we do have a quick announcement, a quick notification for you that we do charge a fee for this show. And the fee it's fairly simple. It's a lot like what other podcasts do. We ask you to help us grow this show by doing simple things wherever you're consuming this content, like liking the video if you're watching this on social media, sharing it out to your feed, your friends, your family, so they can see this content as well. And when you do these types of things, these platforms learn. They say, oh, well, so-and-so shared this, so-and-so liked this. So when other people are going into their feeds, our podcast will show up in their feed when you do things like that. So it's simple. That's the fee. You have anything you want to add to that, guys? It's pretty straightforward, right? Share, like, subscribe.
I like to say free as in free beer.
You like free beer.
It's not free that it's not worth anything. It's just free that we're giving something high value without charging.
That's right. We are experts in the cybersecurity world, and we are bringing you information that's not being talked about anywhere for sure. So in exchange for that, that's what we ask for. So we appreciate the support, and we will continue to show up every week and give you this content as we've done for like 4 years now, Andre?
That's right. Yep.
Something like that. So here we go, guys. Let's get into it. Stillwater Mine. We're going to talk about a couple breaches that are going on right now, new ones. And then on the show today, we're going to update everybody on what's going on at the Port of Seattle, the city of Columbus, and then we're going to update everybody on what's going on over in London with the transportation for London cyber attack. All of these are cyber attacks that happened several weeks ago, but we feel like there's been enough developments and interesting developments that we want to kind of bring those updates to everyone a little bit later on in the show. So let's just get right into the newer breaches, guys. And as I mentioned, this Stillwater mine, and the Stillwater Mining Company, guys, is the only platinum and palladium mine operator in the U.S. And they confirmed a significant data breach, not a little one, a significant one. The breach was discovered in July, but it actually occurred in June. And we talk about that all the time on the channel, is that it takes a while for businesses to figure out somebody's even in their system. And during the time that these cyber criminals were in the network of Stillwater Mining, that resulted in the theft of sensitive and personal financial information of about 7,300 employees. And this included their government IDs, their social security numbers, and their health information. And the breach was claimed by the ransomware group Ransom Hub on July 22nd, with the data allegedly leaked on the dark web on August 15th. The company has done the normal knee-jerk reaction of involving external cybersecurity experts and law enforcement to help in the investigation and help with the response to the incident. So what are your thoughts here, guys? One of the few companies in the United States that actually mines two fairly precious metals that are needed for a lot of things in today's world.
Yeah, this is going to be borderline national security type stuff because, like you mentioned in the beginning when you were getting started, This is the only company left right now that is mining palladium and platinum. Palladium is used for catalytic converters, which take the pollution out of cars and, convert it into, something else. So it is important to clean air strategy when you have gas burning cars. So that's one thing. It really is a borderline, we've talked a lot about infrastructure, things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little more involved behind this other than just some pray and spray, random ransomware attack, that it could be targeted. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. We don't know that it was, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if it was. And then, getting the information that they received from the employees, 7,200, tax ID numbers, social security, passport, government ID, financial information, medical information, health plan numbers, birth certificates. I mean, this is a pretty rough one. And those people whose information has been breached need to really be watching out.
Yeah, I really think this is a 1-2 punch, in the sense that the article is talking about how Russia has been undermining this mineral, and they've been flooding the market where, to other countries, as far as making it cheaper to provide and trying to undercut this company. So I think this is a perfect 1-2 punch. Let's flood the market. Let's hit them with a cyber attack, and let's see if they can still stay in business.
Yep. And then, guys, it's interesting to me because this has been going on for some time now, right? If my memory serves me correct, right shortly after the current administration took office, so going on almost 4 years ago at this point, right? They announced this cybersecurity initiative or cybersecurity plan, which I kind of applaud them because they were one of the first administrations to put something like that out. And then, we remember the famous meeting between Biden and Putin where, he basically said, lay off our critical infrastructure. And ever since then, we just see critical infrastructure get hit left and right. I mean, it's almost like the conversation never really even happened in the mind of Putin. He just dismissed it because they just continue to hit critical infrastructure. And we'll talk about, schools being part of that critical infrastructure and what they're dealing with if we have time towards the end of the show. But we see things happening in other industries in terms of compliance and making people do the right thing. What needs to be done in order for critical infrastructure sectors to not be hit like this? Like, when do we just stop putting pretty pictures on a paper and say, hey, don't attack these? And when do we actually put regulation behind these industries and tell them, like, hey, if you don't start securing your stuff, you're going to pay, not only are you going to have to deal with a cyber attack, but you're also going to have to answer to the government, and potentially be fined or held liable in some way for not doing this stuff. I
mean, if that's what regulation is, the answer.
Right, but
that's coming from a Florida guy.
I mean, when is it going to happen, though? And that's what I'm asking. Like,
lives has to be. Unfortunately, life has to be lost. It has to be that much of an impact or that much of an inconvenience, because I know we have tools in our industry that can detect when these type of sensitive data is being exported out, leaving your network, so to speak, if it's social security numbers or, date of birth or things like that. So there are ways you can kind of know if that type of information is leaving your network, leaving your computers.
One other, go ahead.
Well, you're not wrong on this one. I don't think, Andre. Like, you're right. It's probably going to require, I don't know if require is the right word, but it's going to take some bigger thing that affects more people, because the reality is the the politicians are typically just interested in getting reelected and, you know, saying things that their people want to hear and all that jazz. And like, they're not really focused on fixing this. But when there's enough pressure, because of, you know, it affecting us more, you know, then maybe they'll come around and finally do something instead of just niceties, but finally, you know, follow through and make something happen. And then I guess, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, here in Florida, we have this huge condo mess right now, as far as, you know, people can't even sell their condos because they can't find anybody to buy it because of the Surfside law. But I kind of see it the same way, but I forgot my train of point, so I'll be right back. Go ahead. It was a good point too, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, guys.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, it does.
So,
now I remember.
Go ahead.
Okay,
So
good.
the government knew that the last 30 years, these board members were kicking the can down the road. They weren't getting the proper building inspections. Rebars were open and balconies needed to be redone. They were falling off and things like that. They knew about it, but they chose not to do anything about it. And then now, unfortunately, 99 people died. And now we have what we have, where they put all of these laws that really is creating a mess right now. But those laws are, so what, knee jerk? Is that what you're
No, the pendulum has just swung completely the other way. I mean, you know, to go from no oversight, you know, and I know this isn't a show about Florida real estate, but you see similarities in what you're talking about to what we see in cybersecurity. That's why we're discussing it.
Right.
And more people can relate to this because a lot of people live in Florida and a lot of people are impacted by this. And if they don't live in Florida and you're in the real estate world, you're very in tune to what's going on in Florida, right? And if you don't know, you didn't have to pay you didn't have to keep your reserve funds funded for these condo complexes until this building collapsed. And then they changed the laws recently to where you have to be funded 125% now, right?
No, 100%.
100%. I thought it was 125%. So you have to be funded 100% now, and you didn't have to ever be funded ever before, right? And this is how condos used to pay for just like normal stuff, right?
Yep. So, and then think about, I know we're going to go in a rabbit hole here, but think about when the pendulum does drop, and what is going to be the extreme for the government? Like, what are they going to be saying that, like, whoa, you're going too extreme. This doesn't even make sense what you're wanting us to do now.
Well, if you remember from Terminator 3, I think they injected a virus into the system because the government had basically put AI in charge of cybersecurity. So hopefully they won't come out and say, well, it's not a problem we can handle, so we're putting AI in charge of it 100%. And that's kind of a joke, but also...
So I'm just reading the private chat. It's getting a little interesting in there. So real quick before we move on to the next ransomware attack we want to cover, just your thoughts, guys, on like the gap. What, like, if a company, somebody's watching this and they own a business or they work in a business and they're concerned about cybersecurity in any way, one question you are probably asking yourself based on this story is, what could I do better? What can I put in place, or how can I figure out if somebody's in my network faster than what this company was able to do, right? Almost over a month of this cyber criminals being in their network before somebody detected it. If I'm a business owner and I don't really understand this stuff, like, how can I make sure that I don't have somebody in my network for a month, you know, ravaging around trying to get their hands on whatever they can?
So it's a great question. And, you know, I'm not going to answer it with the answer. I'm going to answer it with a thought, and then we can continue on with the answer. Is the crazy thing is you can maybe get caught up to today, but the cat and mouse game is changing so fast. Like, getting caught up today, you're going to be behind a little bit tomorrow. And every day you wait, you're not just behind and statically behind, you're getting farther and farther behind every day that you wait. I was just reading an article a little while ago about some of the evasion tactics that are kind of hot, on the horizon right now. And I just thought to myself, man, it's that old cat and mouse game. And wow, things are changing. So to partially answer your question, if you don't do anything, you're getting farther and farther behind. And it's not a one and done. This is a moving target that we have to move for. It's a journey, if you will.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, for me anyway, guys, it's the frustration that I have when I talk to business owners, and you have a surface level conversation, and essentially they're like, yeah, we're good, we're fine, we have enough cyber protections in place and we've never had a problem. And I would venture to say that this Stillwater probably was doing something, right? That maybe they had CrowdStrike, maybe they had something in place, right? But what, like, at the end of the day, to me, that business owners have to understand that there are tools out there. I think Andre alluded to this earlier in his comments, right? There are tools out there available to companies like us, to your IT people, to your IT department. The reality of it is your IT people don't have the bandwidth or capacity to take the time to figure out what tools are best to figure out if somebody's in your network, right? That's the challenges that businesses face. It's not only lack of awareness, but it's also lack of people being able to have the time in the day to get to it, to learn the tool. So these are two challenges that businesses face all the time that I see that cause hackers to be able to be in the networks for long periods of time, right? Overstretched IT departments, IT staff, and you thinking that you have enough tools in place to detect this. Well, Stillwater just learned that they had neither, right? And now they're going to shore it up, just like every other company does after a cyber attack. They're going to get all the tools. They're going to get all the people in place. They're going to work with outside companies, because their internal team can't handle it all. That's the reality of the world we live in. Yep. We talked to a 50-person Department of Defense company yesterday. They had 2 IT people for 50 people. And these guys were like, their eyes were red. They were so stressed out. And now they have these CMMC requirements that they have to deal with. They want nothing to do with it. They're like, please just take care of this for us. We just want to work 5 more years and retire. It was literally the answer that we the conversation we have with them. So it's everywhere. And this is the reality of IT departments in businesses around the United States, is they're stretched thin and they don't have the proper resources to deal with these problems. And that's why they go undetected for months and months at a time, in my opinion. So let's talk about the other ransomware attack, gentlemen. The Brunswick Hospital Center in New York, a psychiatric treatment facility, has reportedly been compromised by, I like the name of this group, Randy, the 3 a.m. ransomware operation. That's a pretty good one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because they say that cyber attacks most likely to happen, after hours, which is kind of becoming a thing of the past. It can happen almost whenever now, but yeah, I like that 3 a.m.
It's better than Ryshida.
Yeah, it is better than Ryshida. It sounds like a disease.
This group threatened to publish the stolen data online. The details regarding the extent of the data breach remain unclear, and the incident follows a pattern of attack by 3 a.m., known for targeting sectors like manufacturing, IT, transportation, primarily in the U.S., France, and the UK. The ransomware gang has a history linked to the Conti and Black Suit operation. They've compromised over 30 organizations to date. So this is an up-and-coming group, guys. 3 a.m., we haven't heard a lot about them, but they've hit a lot of organizations in a short period of time. And quite frankly, based on my research and what I know from what we do here at Exact, there are like 3 or 4 ransomware groups out there that are up and coming, that are on the rise, and that we're going to hear a lot about them. So Killian being one of them, the Killian group. And then there's another group out there. I got to get their name. They're hitting small businesses for like nominal amounts of money, like 20 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand. They're not looking for millions. They're kind of getting in quick, dirty, hitting really small businesses, like 3-5 employees, maybe 10. Getting in, and they're asking for amounts a lot of times that wouldn't trigger an insurance claim. So it's interesting to see how things are happening. But going back to this Brunswick deal, this is a psychiatric treatment facility. The cyber criminals have their hands on the data. And as we know, and as we're going to talk about later today, we know cyber criminals love to release private health information on the dark web, right? No doubt. Like, it happens all the time.
Yes.
I remember seeing a post recently about the average Russian male. Randy, did you post that?
Which one?
It was a post, and it talked about the average Russian citizen male was only like about 15,000 a year. So
right.
You posted that?
No, it wasn't me, but you're not wrong there.
Yeah.
And that, a small business that coughs up 20 grand, I mean, could literally be somebody's salary for a year, at one of these organizations.
Yeah.
We ought to bring up a little more information on that and maybe talk about it next show, Bryan. I'd like to look at that a little bit more.
What is that, Randy?
The one that's focusing on small businesses.
Oh yeah. All right. I'll let you know who that is.
Yeah. And the reason I mentioned that is because this 3 a.m. group is linked to a Russian back, people. So that's
they all are. I mean, at the end of the day, they all are. I mean,
so you're not going to get extradited. The government is, as long as you probably don't attack their government, they're fine, and everybody's happy.
No, but I do know that Russian businesses are being hit with ransomware more, and it's not being done by Russians. So
okay.
So there's other factions of cyber criminal groups around the world that exist.
Right.
That might be U.S. based, might be based out of somewhere else, but they attack Russian businesses. So it's happening everywhere. It's kind of crazy what's going on out there.
Explaining Randy's Tesla.
All right. So, hey, Luke, coming in from the UK, we're about to get to that update on the London subway tax station. It's probably why you're here. Appreciate the support. So, moving right along, let's give a quick update on this Port of Seattle. Very interesting what's going on here. It's been going on for several weeks. But at the end of the day, guys, Seattle has just been dealing with this airport situation. They came out, just kind of high-level updates for everybody. They came out, the airport did, the Port of Seattle, was basically touting the fact that they didn't pay the ransom. And then Ryshida, the ransomware group, came out and said, we're the ones that hit them, and now we're going to release all this data that we stole, hoping that they can get paid for the data that they stole and paid before, they're threatening to release the data. And when they do that, they're hoping to get paid at that point so the data doesn't get released. According to the Port of Seattle, they don't know what was stolen. So my guess would be, guys, is since they didn't pay the ransom, they're not going to pay this, because if they don't think, just like we're going to talk about the city of Columbus, just like the city of Columbus, if they don't think there's anything in that data, then they're not going to even worry about paying it. Right? And what did we learn from Columbus? What are they going through right now? Right? They didn't pay. Their data was released, and now it's a big mess for them.
Yeah.
Right.
That still goes back to, do you pay, do you not pay? Who's the end user, the employee,
right,
that has nothing to do with it, that innocent person,
Yep.
I mean,
and we're going to talk about in a couple minutes here, like how this stuff is impacting people's lives when companies don't protect this data, organizations don't protect this data, and then it ends up on the dark web. There's some pretty crazy stuff going on with this data. Like, And that's why that last one that we just covered, the Brunswick with the psychiatric hospital, that raises serious concerns when you see that kind of data, because like Randy, Andre, and I, we have a very deep understanding and a deep perspective of what goes on the dark web. Most people don't understand what goes on there and what the real threat is. So anything else with the Port of Seattle that you guys found interesting before we move on and talk about Columbus? Go ahead.
I have one too. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, okay. So just a side note, it's that whole, do you pay the ransom or not? Because if you do, obviously maybe you can get your data back, although you never get it all back, but get most of your data back if you're lucky. Do you pay that, and then that sends money straight to the criminal organizations? Or this data, and these are just random thoughts, but they all fit with this data that maybe the Port of Seattle says, oh, it's no big deal. But like you said, that data affects the actual person whose data is released. It affects them big time. And my other kind of thought, this is kind of a different thought, is those people are going to most likely come back and sue the organization because their data was released. Like we talked about the Brunswick thing a minute ago, they'll probably end up getting sued if that data gets out, when that data gets out. Same with this. So, do you pay the ransom or do you get sued later? You know what I mean? What are your options here? So just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, that was the same thing. And I would think that you'll end up paying more when you get sued. But I know with governments, sometimes you have to like get permission to sue or something like that. But and you had said no big deal, right? But no big deal to them. It's not going to affect us. We don't care. It's not our, it's not our information.
Well, it is affecting like Columbus. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I mean, they have criminal investigations that are jeopardized as a result of their cyber attack. So it does affect them, right? They're undercover agents. They're essentially their law enforcement has been exposed by this cyber criminal group. I would consider that a pretty big deal. Like, again, moving on to Columbus, you guys, are we done with that? Because we can move right into Columbus. How this mayor still has a job, I have no idea. I said that when this first happened, when they first attacked this security researcher, and just every day that goes on is just another day of evidence of proof that this mayor needs to go, and he's completely in over his head. Just my thought. I mean, 21% of the city systems are still down as of today. So you still got over 20% of the systems still down. But we didn't pay. We're so like, great that we didn't pay. You're still down.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're again, going back to, bullying the cybersecurity researcher who basically was just doing what we do. Warning idiots that don't know what they're talking about, that you don't know what you're talking about. So you might want to put a sock in it. And here's the right information. And this is pretty bad, dude. Like, this isn't just like no big deal. All the data they got was encrypted. We're good. And this mayor is getting an education in cybersecurity, a crash course education in cybersecurity and incident response, and everything that goes along with that. Through this event. So, he'll probably start a cybersecurity / incident response consulting firm after this. But man, he's getting a lesson and a half because he's doing it all wrong. Like, every step he makes is wrong, in my opinion.
He's made a ton of them, and he may not end up with his own cybersecurity business, but maybe at some point he'll come out of this with a lot of talks to give to a lot of other cities, to quit dinking around with cybersecurity and people's data and start getting cyber secure. And, it goes back to this previous last couple of ones we've talked about, this particular data breach, hundreds of thousands of personal records. And I don't mean like 100,000 with, social being one, name being another. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people with all sorts of data attached to that, released in this thing. And all of those people are going to have heartache, troubles, money loss, like all kinds of bad stuff's going to come out of this.
Yep.
So anyway,
and this whole thing, like, it just reeks of like government corruption at its finest, because instead of like, they don't want to, these elected officials are so afraid of looking bad, which to us, they look bad. Like, you can't look any worse in my eyes. Right. But they're trying to save face. Right. And I got to believe that at the end of the day, when the grass is cut, the snakes are going to show. And these guys are going to look like buffoons when this is all said and done. They think they're skirting away with something by creating this fake ass settlement with this cybersecurity researcher, right? If you look at the court order, it basically, he's still allowed to discuss the incident. He's still out there talking to the media, right? So it was more or less like, let's create a big spectacle around this cybersecurity researcher. Oops, we messed up. Now let's try to clean this up the best we can, right? So the court order basically says he can discuss the events. That's not the problem. What he can't do is he can't take the information that was stolen and posted on the dark web, and he can't bring it to the surface. That's essentially what he agreed to not do, right? And since when is that against the law? Seriously, like, are we really going to just start creating laws by taking people to court? Like, it's not against the law for somebody to go on the dark web and take information and put it on Twitter or put it on Facebook. It's the same thing.
Yep.
And people think it's two different places. And like, one place is like really bad and like you can't cross over there. No, you can. It's really easy, actually. And you can copy data from the dark web to the surface web in 3 clicks of a mouse.
So go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just going to say they definitely was just trying to change the narrative, trying to make it like, hey, forget about what's happening over here with this whole breach and how much data. Let's focus on this bad guy here. He's the problem.
So, and then the mayor, again, he's had to perform a mea culpa at subsequent press conferences. Of course he is, because he's an idiot. And his initial statements were based on information he had at the time. Well, the information I had at the time was wrong, so I was giving you wrong information. We've been telling you guys on this channel for 4 weeks since this thing happened that all this stuff he's saying is wrong. And we're not even involved. Clearly, we discovered that this was inaccurate information, and I have to accept responsibility for that. Well, how about stepping down? Because you've done it enough now. It's pathetic. Randy, come on. Get fired up. If this guy was in Texas, you'd be fired up.
Well, yeah, I think we've kind of said a lot around this, and it reminds me, sorry, but it reminds me of some country where some crime is out of control. I think we mentioned Venezuela doing this at one point. I think they outlawed reporting on murders, because their murder rate was so high. Like, it just feels like that. Like, you're going after somebody who's not the bad guy here. The bad guy here are the criminals and or potentially people that look the other way when they should have been securing customer information. So,
yep.
Get me started. I'm about to.
It's very interesting how this guy is still in office right now, and people aren't calling for his head. So they're doing their best to try to save their job. We'll see how it goes. I give this guy, where's my watch at? I give him till October 15th.
Yeah, but who would know? Because he's a mayor, so who would fire him?
He would have to resign, just so like every other elected official when they have to go. They resign because they get enough pressure from everybody else, right? And I give this guy another month, and I think he'll be out. If he survives this, I'll be highly surprised. Let's move right along. Let's talk about what's going on in London here, guys, because another great example of you just weren't ready for this, right? This London subway attack, lots of things happened. It didn't end up, affecting the operations of the subway, but a lot of information was stolen as a result. And then we also see some inefficiencies in how they were dealing with the situation. As Randy, pointed out when we were putting the show together today, he was like, look at this. He's like, they had to have 30,000 employees manually have their passwords reset. So basically, Randy described it, they had to go into the office and have IT reset their passwords after this attack. So just the inefficiency behind that is just mind-boggling. What else do you guys, take away from something like this with the London subway attack and what had to happen there?
I'm still just trying to figure out why you have to go to the office. Is it like a one server or something and only one guy that can do it, and you can't just it just sounds, I mean, if it was Office 365, for example, you could have them sign in, put in their old password, new password, re-authenticate, etc. But
maybe they shut down the VPN, or maybe there was a flaw in the VPN and that's what was attacked, and they just didn't want to turn it back on.
Yeah, or they just, when they were just trying to figure out what was happening, they probably did a command that just reset everybody's password.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Who knows? I think if anything, they probably had a vulnerability in a VPN, in a firewall device VPN, and they took it offline, and everybody's machine was configured with that client, and that no longer existed. So that's probably why they have no other way. They have no other way of remoting into the network to change the password other than show up to the office.
Right. And can you imagine 30,000 people having to come in? I mean, 24/7, that would take days or weeks, and
well, hopefully they didn't have to go to like one IT guy. Hopefully it was just a matter of like, hey, go into your office, plug your computer into the network, reset your password, then you can go back to working from home if that's what they do there. I don't know.
They just mentioned that they were all going to have to be in person to make it happen. So
I know where my wife works. This has happened not for cyber attack reasons, but for other reasons, and she's had to go into the office to get her password updated. They weren't able to do it over the VPN for whatever reason.
Yeah. So, we had I guess it was about a year ago, maybe, we had Cindy Phillips on here, and she talked about how, and I think I said this in the last few weeks, maybe even last week, if someone sees a car crash and then you say to a group of people, I saw a car crash, like we all kind of know, what happens in a car crash because we've seen so many of them. But in a cyber attack, if we say so-and-so was cyber attacked, we're all just kind of like, oh, sounds not fun. We don't really know all the things that are going on. And the reason this article just jumped out at me is, as a business owner, you don't really understand all of the time that's going to be wasted, the inconveniences, possible lack of revenue, possible lack of paying your people that's going to happen as a result of a cyber attack.
Yeah, you're either going to lose sales or you're going to spend more money.
Yeah. This is just one of those, just wow.
Right.
And just imagine the people that won't be able to get to the office for a certain amount of days, and now they can't work. Hey, I can't. Right. I work from home, and I got my baby, and I got to coordinate it.
You're 100% right, Andre. If they have a work from home environment, this just complicates, and yeah, right. It'll draw things out even further. No doubt. I agree with you 100% there. Because that's what we see, right? You wouldn't know that unless you have the experience. Right? When people work from home and you're telling people you got to come back in the office for something, they're not making that a priority.
Right.
Unless you
make
it a priority on them, like give them a deadline or something. But if you leave it up to them, that's the other thing, right? And then who's chasing down the people to get their passwords reset? IT, right? So they're wasting their time tracking people down, chasing people down. I mean, it becomes really inefficient really quick for companies. And
then you get to the office. Yep. Get to the office, and then the person is like, you give them a sheet of paper with instructions, and then they're doing Alt Delete Control when it's supposed to be Alt Control Delete, and they can't figure it out. And now another resource has to come and show them and hold their hand. So
it could get ugly.
In this case, it's government. right?
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about lack of revenue.
Oh, and the last zinger is they change their password, and then 2 minutes later they don't
Yep.
remember what it is, and now you got to redo
Yep.
the whole thing.
Or they
Right.
drive home,
Yeah.
right? And then they're calling the help desk. I just changed my password 2 hours
forgot.
ago, and now I don't remember what it is.
Well, oh gosh. And so that creates chaos. Chaos
Right.
obviously makes them less secure.
Right.
And then what if they change all 30,000 passwords and they're like, no, the people are still in the system? You know what I mean? Like, what if it doesn't help?
Oh, Mr. Brightside there. All right, so I want to talk about these other kind of random articles we kind of kept at the end here because I think they tie in nice to a lot of the things we were talking about today. I'm going to start with this one for the schools because we talked about schools and critical infrastructure, and I thought this was interesting because they did a study and they're learning that schools, whether you're K through 12, high school, university, private school, doesn't really matter based on the research that's been done. Your ransomware demand starts at $1 million and goes up from there. They are not seeing ransom demands under $1 million for schools. And that's really kind of like the first time we've seen an industry where the number has been, the minimum number for ransomware demand has been set at like $1 million, and you don't see it much lower than that. In other industries, you see it lower than that all the time. So there has to be a reason why cyber criminals have looked at schools and said, if we hit a school, we ain't taking anything less than $1 million. So why do you think that is, guys?
It's called screaming moms.
That is true, 100%.
Screaming moms saying, "You need. How can you? I need to get to work. I need you to babysit my kid for 8 hours. I can't deal with this." And,
well, they might not have the PTO. I mean, give them a break on that.
All right.
I mean, they might lose their job.
Speaking for my family.
Well, you know, and they also might have good insurance. And since there's better insurance there, that makes them, you know, it's pretty crazy or pretty sad or whatever you want to say, does make them kind of more of a target. Like I've said 1 million times, follow the money. All through history, all through cybersecurity, all through crime, just follow the money. Follow the money. That'll tell you almost everything you need to know.
And here in Florida, there's a rule, state law, that kids have to be in school for a certain amount of days. So now if they're disrupted for a week, now that cuts into the holidays. So even more pressure to pay.
Andre can't go on his cruises. So, yeah, I mean, I just find it fascinating that like if you're a school, if you're a superintendent of a school district and you're watching this, you better have $1 million somewhere. I'm sure you do, because that's part of the reason why they ask for that number, because they know you have it. Either you have it in an insurance policy, you have it in a reserve account, or you're just like here in the U.S. You can just go float a bond and charge more taxes, quite frankly, if you really need to pay for it. And they know this. So, you know, cyber criminal groups out there worked together and said, hey, we hit this type of organization. This is the minimum number. So we'll see where that goes. But that's a pretty hefty bill for a school. And then, you know, just think about it on the flip side, the information that they maintain on children, if that ends up on the dark web, but what that means as well, right? So I think that's part of the reason why the number's also high, because, you know, that information shouldn't end up on the dark web. As we see here with our next topic of discussion, our final one for the show today, guys. And it's this healthcare giant that settled patient data theft lawsuit for $65 million. The interesting thing that I found about this one, guys, is it's a hospital, I believe, up in my area. I think it's up in Lehigh Valley, which is up in Pennsylvania. Lehigh Valley Health Network. Their settlement for $65 million was because the crooks stole nude pictures of patients and leaked them on the dark web. So the question that was asked was, they didn't pay the ransom. right? So they didn't pay the ransom, but they were fined at $65 million because, here's an example of cyber criminals saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're going to release this data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we release this data, this could be really bad for you. And we
Mm-hmm.
see it in Columbus. We see it with organizations all over the place that go, you don't have anything anybody would want. Nobody wants our stuff. You go ahead, release it. Well, look, here you go.
Yep.
Came back at them, Alpha V, Black Cat, through all this patient data, just dumped it on the dark web. And then here you go, class action lawsuit brought on by its own patients. Now they have to pay $65 million. And it's all because that patient data included nude pictures of these patients.
Yeah, that made the courts more likely to, because that hurts more. You know what I mean? There's more pain associated with that. And that made the courts realize that. And you're right. Like, we're not advocates around here of paying the ransom or not paying the ransom. But in this case, the ransom probably would have been $2-3 million, maybe, right? And like that would have saved them a lot of money down the road. Obviously, paying the ransom doesn't get you unhacked, so you're still going to have to spend all the money for that. But they still have to spend all the money after this lawsuit.
What we are advocates are, Randy, is of doing things the right way and doing them so you don't get attacked. And guess what's even cheaper than all those things that you threw out?
Not getting attacked.
Prevention. Right. Prevention is way cheaper, but y'all don't want to spend the money on this. And when you talk to me on the phone, oh, Bryan, that's too expensive. We can't afford that. Okay. We'll see.
Okay. Keyword here also is settles. So what do we always know in lawsuits when there's some type of settlement that it doesn't go to jury?
They're getting off on pennies on the dollar. That's what that means.
Pennies on the dollar. And they know that if their jury heard what happened and the stories and the inefficiencies that this hospital didn't do, they would have lost their
Somebody wrote a check for $65 million at Lehigh Valley Health Network and couldn't sign it fast enough. Like, oh, we're getting off for $65 million. And that's literally like, you don't think that that's what happened, but that's exactly what happened. Because what Andre's saying is they were probably looking at 3 times that. Right? They're probably looking at close to $200 million, in defense fees and dealing with all these people and everything that they were looking at. Somebody came to them and said, this is what it's going to cost you to defend this. And they were like, $65 million to settle sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a comment, guys. I don't know if you guys want to handle it, or you guys want to handle this, or you want to wrap up the show.
I have a few minutes.
All right, I'm gonna throw it up. It's Luke again. Kind of around the. It's an interesting question. I figured I was hoping we could answer it because obviously we talked about hackers staying inside of the network of the mining company, and now this guy's like, "Hey, I'm launching the show. You were talking about that, and is it possible that they're in the TfL servers if they wanted to stay hidden?" Even if everyone reset their passwords, etc. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit, right? Because, if you don't know, you might think like, hey, we're all resetting our passwords. Everything must be good. We're not going to get attacked again. Let's educate people and let them know what the truth is and what reality of it is. I mean, just doing this one thing isn't any kind of reassurance in my mind that these criminals are not in your network still. Right. So nobody knows why this had to happen other than what I speculated earlier was that the firewall device that you use to log into your VPN if you work remotely was probably the main reason why they got hacked, and they decided to take that out because it probably couldn't be updated. These things happen. Like, these devices go end of life cycle. And if you don't replace it, you're not getting updates. And that's what leads to these hacks, because they're full of vulnerabilities that don't get patched. And then the next thing you know, you're hacked. And then somebody comes in and says, you can't even fix that device that you have in there. You have to get rid of it, right? So they get rid of it, and then this is the result of that. Everybody now has to go into the office to reset their passwords. So in other words, in my mind, guys, they're not even mutually exclusive. Like, they're not related, right? The password reset and whether the hackers are still in the network or not are not even related things or events, right? You have to know how they got in. And if they got in through the firewall, then removing it is obviously stopping them from getting in, but they could have planted back doors throughout your network once they were in, to allow them to get back in the other way. So in my mind, like, and we talk about this all the time, if you don't take everything down to the ground and rebuild it from scratch, you always have a risk of hackers being in your network.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, this is a great point. Could they stay inside of the network servers at TfL forever? Man, if they have a 0-day, which they probably do, depends on the level of hacker that we're talking about. But if they have a 0-day, they could be hidden in a little hole, stay on that network forever. And, one of the techniques is literally doing things on the super slow. So you get access, you wait a month, and then you do one little thing, and then you wait a month, and then you do another little thing, where each one of those, if they were all done in the course of like 3 hours, would raise all kinds of red flags. But because you're letting the, maybe their data that they're only looking at is only for 30 days or a week, and you're letting all that expire, and then the AI or the people just don't catch it. So bottom line, yeah, I mean, obviously just resetting passwords, I mean, there's no way that just resetting 30,000 passwords gets the bad guys out of the network. That's right. Fixing some other kind of a problem. Hopefully the people on the inside over there aren't thinking that's going to get the bad guys out of the network. Oh, let's just change all the passwords and then they'll be locked out.
Yeah. So, I mean, in other words, Luke, yes, they could stay in there forever if you don't recover the systems correctly, which means, you've taken the systems down to a level where you're comfortable that no back doors could exist, or anything they installed while they were in there, is gone. Andre, final thoughts?
Yeah. If it's some type of malware and it's on the computers, just going back to resetting the passwords won't do anything. And especially if they didn't get paid, they sure want to prove something to you. If you didn't pay them the first time, and they can try to get back. So obviously, if it's literally 30,000 employees, I know they say 30,000 passwords, but if it's 30,000 employees, that's going to be a lot of computers that you would have to wipe and reload. So they probably took that into perspective as well, that, realistically, they have the manpower to do that. So it really just depends on how they got in and what they believe with these, I guess, outside consultants that they, always bring in, what they told them and what they found in the forensics.
Yep, that's it. So hopefully that answered your question there, Luke. Appreciate the question, and that'll be it for today, guys. Thanks for your input. Thanks for another good week of discussion and kind of bringing the latest and greatest when it comes to this stuff to the forefront. Because I mean, nobody's talking about this anywhere else, and we are literally talking about like what's happening in real time. It's pretty crazy if you think about it. Like, it's some of the stuff that we talk about in the show, and you look back 3 months, and if you watch or listen to an episode, it's pretty mind blowing how on it we are on this channel. So we'll continue to do that for you, and we'll continue to bring you this information. Just keep sharing us out, liking us, subscribing to us. See you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.